Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerd Mode On, and welcome to episode 3 of Sniper Sundays, a video series where I'll be using anything from DMRs to bolt-action sniper rifles, and just kind of going over some information in relation to the item, similar to a weapon review. So without further ado, let's jump right into the episode. So starting things off, the weapon that we are going to be doing today is the MK11 Mod O. And this is actually a very effective weapon. I'm going to be going over some of the analytical statistics to start things off, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how the weapon performs. So, it has a 260 round per minute, which is actually not too bad. That's on par with a lot of them. That's a pretty consistent number when it comes to the DMR category, and usually they don't venture too far off of that standard number, so you don't have to worry about having a disadvantage when it comes to at least the rounds per minute for the centralized class. So looking at the velocity of the weapon, you guys are going to notice that it's going to be clocking in at 550 meters a second, which is also not the best, but as well as not the worst. It clocks in at the 5th best in its category, which is the bottom of the barrel, but to say the least, it's definitely going to perform on top notch, especially for a weapon of its characteristics. So looking at the damage model, of course, you guys are going to notice that it's going to be doing a maximum damage of 45 damage up until 15 meters. Now after 15 meters, it's going to start to drop off. You guys are going to notice once we hit around 80 meters that the weapon is only going to be doing 38 damage, which is pretty consistent with all of the DMRs. There's not a whole lot of difference there when it comes to the damage model of these particular weapons, but to say the least, that's definitely pretty sufficient, and it's going to take approximately 3 bullets at any range to kill the opposition. So with all that information discussed, let's talk a little bit about the magazine size and the reload speed. So you guys are going to notice that this particular weapon does have a 20 round magazine. Now of course, if you do have one in the chamber, you're going to be able to have 21 rounds in total, which is definitely pretty good when it comes to the DMR category. It's pretty consistent with a lot of the other ones. There's not a whole lot of difference there, and you're not going to notice a huge differential when it comes down to these weapons. But also looking at the reload speeds, if you do have one bullet left in the magazine, that's going to allow your reload to be 1.85 seconds, which is definitely a pretty fast reload for a DMR. Now, of course, if you do happen to use up all your ammunition and you kind of don't have anything left in the magazine, of course you are going to have to swap one out for a new one, which is going to take about 2.4 seconds to do the entire reload. Now, of course, I want to discuss a little bit about the recoil because it's very interesting. Now, of course, most DMRs do have an initial amount of recoil when it comes to the vertical side of it, considering that these weapons are a single fire only weapon. You guys are going to notice that it's going to kick up vertically at 0.5, and then, of course, if we look at the horizontal numbers, it's going to be negative 0.3 when it comes to the left side, and it's going to have a 0.6 pull to the right. So the way to counter this, if you're on a PC or even a console, you're going to want to pull down and to the left to decrease the recoil, which is also going to keep it a lot more level, and it's going to be a lot more easy to control when it comes down to sustained firing and becoming under suppression. So of course I want to let you guys know that there is a first shot multiplier, and that's going to be clocking in at 2 times. So you guys are going to notice that your vertical recoil is going to be hitting 1.0 in theory, and of course you're going to be constantly hitting that considering that your weapon is only single fire and you don't have the ability to make it into a burst or fully automatic weapon. So of course, guys, kind of going over all that information, I wanted to let you guys know about a couple of recommendations when it comes down to the class setup for this particular weapon, and just give you guys an idea of how I would be using it in particular situations. So jumping right into the optics when it comes down to my recommendations for this particular weapon, I really did enjoy the Coyote sight. I found it to be very effective. It allowed me to be more aggressive and also sustain the ability to kill the opposition while still meeting the recommendations for the damage model. It's always good to be able to achieve that higher damage, of course, and it allows you to have a little bit more of a cushion when it comes down to combat situations. But of course, if you are wanting to be a little bit more defensive, a little bit more strategic, then of course you could probably go with the M145 optic, which is a 3.4 times optic. So either way you look at it, you do have two really good sights that definitely fit two different playstyles, but to say the least, I really enjoyed the Coyote sight, and I found it allowed me to be more aggressive and more of a team player when it came down to situations that I commonly find myself in. So of course, looking at the accessories now for the weapon, I highly recommend going with the laser sight just because it allows your hipfire to be a lot better than it is. DMRs are not known to be great hipfire machines. That's not what they were intended for, and that's not usually the engagements that you find yourself in. But to say the least, if you are caught off guard, it's always a great idea to at least have something that can enhance your ability to kill the opposition, especially in those close quarter combat situations. So jumping into the barrel attachments, I would highly recommend going with a flash hider. It has 0 negative effects and it only has positives, which is always good. It eliminates the flash from your weapon, which can make you a little harder to see, especially if you're wanting to be a more aggressive or defensive player. Now, of course, you do have the ability to use a heavy barrel, which is going to make your vertical recoil a lot more known, but to say the least, it's going to make your shots long range a little bit more accurate, and considering that your weapon is only single fire anyway, you shouldn't have a problem lining up the shots and preparing for the next initial shot as well. And finally, looking at the underbarrel attachments, this is going to really depend on how you've already set up your weapon, but if you are going with a flash hider, I would highly recommend going with the stubby grip just to enhance your overall accuracy when it comes down to it anyway. But if you are going to be using a heavy barrel and maybe you're not the best at controlling recoil, I would highly recommend going with an angled grip to try to decrease the first shot initial recoil that you're going to be occupying or seeing quite often. But overall, those would be my recommendations for the weapon to try to enhance its already existing abilities and maybe bring it on a couple of different circumstances that the weapon wasn't intended for, but to say the least, it should enhance those as well. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I will see you guys next week for the next episode, and until then, guys, let me know in the comments if there's anything you guys would like to see when it comes down to the episode, and of course, I will see you guys then. So this is NMO, and I'll be signing out, guys. Peace.